Manchester United could break the bank for Carlos Baleba and make a record signing for the Cameroonian midfielder. And you know what? They absolutely should, because he would enhance every single quality that Manchester United have in the midfield and also provide what they exactly lack. Now, like I said, he won't come cheap. He definitely won't come cheap. And Brighton value him at more than what they sold Caicedo for, or around the same benchmark. But Manchester United are also potentially looking to partner him in the future with Wharton from Crystal Palace. Now, with Kobbie Mainoo, with the potential, exclusion as the years go on of Bruno Fernandes, with the different profiles in midfielders that Manchester United have, like the young Sekou Kone, Toby Collier going out on loan, Casemiro and Ugarte, Carlos Baleba could be the marquee signing this summer, despite the fact that Manchester United have already spent 200 million in the window. We are going to do a tactical breakdown of why Manchester United should target Carlos Baleba. How can he improve Manchester United? What qualities can he add? And most importantly, how can Manchester United shift around tactically and the system can change with the inclusion of Carlos Baleba? Be sure to hit the like button, guys. Be sure to subscribe as well if you're new here. Let's get into it. Now, let's start with obviously one of, I think, Carlos Baleba's strongest qualities. Now, at Brighton and over the past couple of seasons at Brighton, you see here on the left, you see is Carlos Baleba, and on the right is actually Moises Caicedo's heat map at Chelsea. Now, they are quite different in the way that they play, but you can see that Carlos Baleba plays a lot like an anchor. He sits right in front of the back line, providing that coverage, picking up the ball from them, being able to drive with the ball. He's very centric. He plays a lot in the center of the fields, but that doesn't mean that he can't play in the wide parts when he's, progressing the ball, making interceptions, making tackles, getting into duels, etc. But his bread and butter is that deep lying area right in front of the back line and also progressing the ball through the middle. Now, he's strong, he's physical, he's literally an engine. He's a box to box. He can play sitting. I've seen him do it, but doing both for Brighton. And I think this is a very interesting comparison to Moises Caicedo, because a lot of people do compare him to Moises Caicedo. I do think they are slightly similar, but I also think there are things that Carlos Baleba does that Moises Caicedo doesn't do, and there's things that Moises Caicedo does that Carlos Baleba doesn't do. That does not mean that neither of them are good, but I also think Carlos Baleba would be an immediate upgrade onto what Manchester United have. Now, let's start with this, and shout out to Opta Analyst for this picture here. This is a average possession area that Carlos Baleba wins possession in. And you see where, like I said, his bread and butter is. Manchester United struggle in that midfield with the duels. They struggle with opponents that, are progressing the ball, that are on a counter, that are on a break. They struggle physically. It's no secret. And I think Carlos Baleba would absolutely improve that for Manchester United. Now, he might not be cheap, that's one thing for sure, but just look at the areas that he navigates in. He navigates everywhere. Outside of the goalkeeper, the opponent's goalkeeper box, he covers every single blade of grass. He's physical, he knows how to defend, but also, like I said, he links that defense and that attack, and that would allow some other defenders maybe to get more advanced. So, for example, if Leacher returns, and we're going to go through that in the tactical board, but if Leacher returns and he's progressing the ball forward, Carlos Baleba could drop in. If Lenny Yoro is progressing the ball forward and he's out of position, Carlos Baleba could drop in. If, the central centre-back, Manchester United want him to push into the midfield, that can create a double pivot for Manchester United alongside Carlos Baleba. That is three different attributes that can benefit Manchester United. He can sit in a double pivot, like I said. He can play as an anchor. He can play as a single six with the runners around him, which we're going to talk about in the tactical board. But look at the average areas of where he wins possessions. This is areas, especially in the middle of the pitch, that Manchester United don't really win possession in. Now, let's start with this screenshot here in particular. Carlos Baleba picks up the ball. He's got 1, 2, 3 players around him, and he's not really got many options of Brighton players next to him. Despite that, that's not a problem. He looks up, he looks around, and one thing that I like about Carlos Baleba is his ability to drive with the ball. And when he does drive with the ball, it suddenly feels like there's a shield around him and nobody can come remotely close to him. You see how far he progresses the ball there, guys. He's outside of the semicircle, guys, and then he's within the own half with those 3 players that are around him, suddenly confused as to where they should be all of a sudden, in terms of the fact that they can't get the ball off him, because he's physical, he's good on the ball, he can dribble well, and most importantly, he can drive very well. And that is just one kind of example of what Carlos Baleba can do on the ball, especially in the middle of the pitch. But look at this here. Brighton in this game, I was actually at this game at Stamford Bridge. Brighton are pressing high, and the trigger point for this is Moises Caicedo, and that's no kind of I'm not firing shots at Moises Caicedo, but he was the trigger point here, because look at the little gap between, or actually it's quite a big gap between Carlos Baleba and Moises Caicedo, but he's able to close that gap down so quickly and press Moises Caicedo immediately within 2 steps, guys. Look at that, within 2 steps he's already closed that space down. Moises Caicedo receives the ball off Sanchez. Some people might say Sanchez shouldn't have passed it to him, should have gone to the centre back option, but he goes to Moises Caicedo because that's his DM, who's meant to be, you know, the person that absorbs the pressure, absorbs the press, and kind of he's meant to get out of it. In this instant, he isn't able to. Baleba nicks the ball off him and immediately goes for goal, and they end up scoring. And that's another example of what he can do further up the pitch. His ability to press, his ability to cover a lot of ground, his ability to transition from a very agile and mobile position where he can switch directions very quickly if necessary. He's able to do all of that. And in this image here, you see he picks up the ball. He's got 3 opponents near him. He's got 3 options near him as well. And this is what Manchester United, I think, lack so badly in the midfield, is that someone that can just turn on the ball immediately and drive into space. And that's exactly what he does. He takes a touch. 2 players are coming at him. Look at this gap. He's literally sandwiched between 2 players in this instance. But that doesn't matter. Why? Because he's able to pick up the ball. And in this clip, he ends up driving forward and helping Brighton start a counter in transition. And that is exactly what Manchester United need. Now, one thing that I like about Carlos Baleba as well is that he absorbs the pressure that maybe Man United's centre-backs would absorb in possession. And that's what I think would help Manchester United, especially because Ruben Amorim in his system likes to see Manchester United centre-backs as the more progressive kind of players. So if you've got a central midfielder, a DM, a 6, a 8, whoever it is, like Carlos Baleba, who can sit in front of the back line and absorb that pressure in possession, that would allow Manchester United's wide centre-backs to be able to drive with the ball more forward, number 1. Number 2, it will also allow them to use Carlos Baleba to get involved in that kind of build-up, in that transition, in that attacking transition, etc. I haven't even spoken about his defensive transitions. That is another attribute that I think he has, that he excels in. His ability to kind of transition in out of possession. And that's something Man United have also lacked. But we're going to go through the tactical breakdown of how Manchester United can utilise him. So let me know your thoughts down below. Now, one thing that Manchester United have struggled with is when they lose possession in the central areas, they tend to be exposed. And sometimes Ugarte finds himself in a foot race that he can't win, or a challenge that he can't win, or a duel he can't win. Casemiro finds himself in that instance. And Bruno Fernandes, who has been turned into this little makeshift 8, this deep line playmaker, does not have the physical attributes for me to play in that deep role. Now, just partnering him with Carlos Baleba, I don't think that's enough. I actually think potentially on the horizon in the next season or 2, Man United might be progressing with a midfield without Bruno Fernandes and might look to move him on. But one thing I will say is Bruno Fernandes is needed for that culture change because of how much respect he has in the dressing room, how much of an important leader he is. You can't have a cultural change by wiping everything out completely. I think it's still key to have Bruno Fernandes in the team. It's still key to have him as the captain because a lot of people respect him, a lot of people look up to him. But this is not about Bruno Fernandes. This video is not about Bruno Fernandes. It's going to be about Carlos Baleba. So make sure you guys hit the like button if you are enjoying this kind of content. And I'll try to keep up this content and do a lot more. Now, there's 2 things that I think Carlos Baleba would help Manchester United with. Number 1, you see here on the screen, is the fact that he can beat the press to, you know, provide the ball to somebody like Bruno Fernandes or Cunha, etc. Now, I didn't show you guys, but his progressive passes last season. Now, I didn't show you guys, but his progressive long passes and his also progressive carries are through the roof. He's able to drive a lot through all these kind of different spaces with the ball, you know, whether it's the wide going far to the wide spaces, whether it's going straight through the middle, he's able to do that. So one thing that he would be able to do, number 1, is, you know, carry past the first, the second, the third man in the middle of the pitch and find those options in attacking transition, and that's the main thing. But another thing he can do is the defensive and the midfield control. The fact that he can, you know, cut the passing lanes, the fact that he's, you know, he's got these instincts of interception and his ability to win duels, and those transition windows and opportunities for opponents will shrinken because of a player like Carlos Baleba in the middle. Now, you know, those 50-50 battles might become 70-30 for Manchester United because of a player like him, and he's able to play in a single pivot and a double pivot. We've seen him do both of that, and if he's got a technical player next to him like a Wharton, like a Kobbie Mainoo, he will absolutely excel. He already excels right now, and it takes that pressure off other players in the first phase of football, because you've got someone like Carlos Baleba, because he can play them diagonal runs, he can trigger those third man run options, and we're gonna break that down right now. So on the screen here you see Carlos Baleba here in the sitting midfield position, kind of sitting as a double pivot with Bruno Fernandes. Now, one of my biggest kind of first points when it comes to this is that we all know that Bruno Fernandes is not a deep line playmaker. The physical aspect of the game he struggles with, number one. Number two, I also think he becomes a slightly bit of a factor, of a trigger factor when he's in this deeper area here, when Manchester United are in defensive situations. If he's got the ball in this area, I do become a bit worried because of he's a bit frantic, because he's a bit erratic. He will always try to go for that long ball across this way, through the middle. He will always try to find the tougher pass to play, but that's not necessarily always the best pass. However, Carlos Baleba, I think this would be his area to kind of navigate. He would own kind of this entire area. Why? Because his job is to be that progressor through the middle. So we went through kind of the breakdown just earlier in this video in terms of how he's able to progress the ball forward in different areas, you know, his ability to drive with the ball. But not just that, it's also his ability to pick up the ball from the back line. So a player like Matthijs de Ligt does not have to worry about trying to be this progressive guy that can carry the ball forward because, you know, he's got a guy like Carlos Baleba in front of him. And even if I switch that out and I put Harry Maguire in there, it's the same thing. Harry Maguire doesn't have to worry about being that progressive player. Now, Manchester United have those wide centre-backs that are good on the ball, whether it's, you know, Licha, hopefully if he's, you know, able to stay fit this season. I think he's our best left-sided centre-back option. Lenny Yoro as well. You also got Aiden Heaven, who does that very well as well. So we have centre-backs, wide centre-backs are able to progress the ball. Now, Manchester United, under Ruben Amorim football, one of the biggest ways that they kind of play football and progress the ball is through the wide channels, number one. Let me just get that arrow there. And also trying to find the 10s. That is one of the main things. I think you guys all know that one of the main ways that Ruben Amorim likes to get into attack and get the ball flowing is through the wide channels, which as a result, which is why I've highlighted, that central area becomes a battle that Manchester United sometimes might not win, because I think it's quite neglected. But with a player like Carlos Baleba, he would be able to operate in this entire area. He's a box to box, which means you could see him here at one point when Man United are attacking, and you can see him here within the next 6 seconds in transition. He's very able of doing that. He's quite quick, he's strong, he's physical, he's demanding, but he reads the game very, very well. And I think people focus on the physical attributes of his game, but I don't think people look at what he offers defensively. Now, one thing that I would love to see, and this is just a thought out loud, when I think about Bruno Fernandes playing in that midfield role next to Carlos Baleba, I think about how much workload that Baleba would have to carry. But what if, and this is just hypothetical, this is just a thought I'm putting out there, what if in possession, in build-up, Manchester United have the option of those wide channels? Because one thing that we saw over pre-season is Matheus Cunha picking up these spaces kind of here, Patrick Dorgu coming out into these spaces here, but also Matheus Cunha's ability to cover those spaces here. We've seen that, right? One thing that I would like Manchester United to do is actually experiment slightly more in possession, because we've seen out of possession, one thing that we saw during pre-season, and it wasn't actually Licha in this instance, it was a different left-sided centre-back, but we're going to use Licha as an example. We saw Man United shifting into a 4-3-3 out of possession. So the opponent has the ball, Manchester United shifting into a 4-3-3, or the opponent has the ball, not Fernandes, they don't have Bruno, they got the ball. So Man United would shift either into a back 4-4-2 out of possession like this, or they'd shift into a 4-3-3 like this. And this would be Ugarte, Casemiro, etc. Like to see Manchester United, and this is more so to do with Ahmad's ability to play as a right back. I would like to see in build up Manchester United have this makeshift back four, which would see Leacher in possession, dropping pushing into the 6th role, have De Ligt and Yoro as the makeshift centre backs, and have Bruno Fernandes operating in the more 10 role. Now, what do you guys see here? You see Manchester United's back four in possession, and then you see the 2-man midfield here, double pivot. You got Bruno Fernandes in his more traditional 10. You've got then your 2 kind of second strikers, and then you've got your striker in Benjamin Sesko. What does that mean? That would mean that Baleba would have a lot more freedom to operate more forward, and Leacher would be able to be that deep lying ball progressor that Baleba could also do, but he also offers some coverage in the midfield. Now, Leacher, one thing about Lisandro Martinez that I notice is sometimes defending the wide channels is not really his strongest point. So if Man United are in defensive transition, having him here and having De Ligt and Yoro, 2 players who I think defend the wide channels pretty well as centre backs, this would be literally a makeshift pivot. Now, I still haven't even got onto the point of inclusion of Kobbie Mainoo, but this is just a thought that I'm having out loud. Now, essentially, I don't think Ruben Amorim would do that. Why? Because Manchester United, under Ruben Amorim and in his system, play with this back three, but also rely on their wide centre-backs to be the progressors, and the central area is not that progressive in comparison to that. We've already kind of broke it down. Manchester United's kind of football is to find the wide players and also the 10s, but also with Baleba and the inclusion of Baleba, because his ability to read the game, this would be the area that he would navigate in. This would be the area that is Baleba ball, if you want to call it that. Now, in the future, and I'm not talking about that far away, I'm talking about in the next 12 or so months, will Bruno Fernandes still be here? Would he be the guy playing next to Baleba? I'm not too sure. But I also think, and this is to say, whether it's Bruno or Kobbie, I think they would both be good partners for Carlos Baleba. I just think that they would have different roles. I think Carlos Baleba with Bruno Fernandes would unlock Bruno Fernandes in that deep lying role and allow him to get more progressive with the ball and allow him to have the less defensive responsibility. Whereas with Kobbie Mainoo, if that was Kobbie Mainoo in this area here, I think it would allow Kobbie Mainoo to have a partner next to him, and that would be a 2-man midfield. Whereas with Baleba and Bruno, I think it's more likely that Baleba would be playing as that lone kind of sitting midfielder, offering the coverage, that being the anchor in front of the back line, and it would unlock Bruno Fernandes. Not saying that he needs unlocking, but I think he needs unlocking when he's playing or starting in this deeper area, because we already know that's not his strongest suit. That's no secret. Another thing that could allow Manchester United to kind of give Baleba an opportunity to unlock other people is, Sesko and Cunha could create a front two with Mbeumo and Bruno Fernandes playing as 2 10s behind them. That would just mean, in my opinion, that Carlos Baleba would have way more space to cover, but also it would be the responsibilities of these guys here to get involved in the build-up. Now, this is just a lot of thinking out loud. This is not necessarily to say that Manchester United will do this 100%, but one thing that I guarantee you guys is that Carlos Baleba would absolutely increase the ceiling of every player in Manchester United, especially that front line. Why? Because he will be able to be that athletic floor raiser in the midfield. I mean, he recovers so much per 90 that there's no way that Manchester United don't look to sign him. And he can play as the 6, he can play as the double pivot, he can be the anchor in front of the back line, he can be that first man in ball progression that would allow Man United to beat the opponent's press and open up opportunities for people like Bruno Fernandes, like Cunha, like Sesko. So the inclusion of Carlos Baleba, I think, would be something beneficial for absolutely everybody in the team. Now, let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Do you think Man United are going to trigger that buy option for him? And it's going to be a big price tag, but in my honest opinion, I think Man United should just go and pay what it is that Brighton want. Now, the terms of the conversation is completely different, but we've gone through why he would be a great signing for Manchester United. And it would allow Man United to actually get ahead of a lot of other teams, because next summer so many other teams in England, outside of England, in European clubs will be lining up to sign a player like Carlos Baleba. And the future of the midfield could be Carlos Baleba, Kobbie Mainoo, and dare I say it, Adam Wharton. Let me know your thoughts down below, guys. If you enjoy these kind of tactical videos, let me know. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well if you're new here.